In this video, I'm going to break loose leash walking down into very clear steps. This video in particular is just a masterclass on the foundation of loose leash walking. Hi, my name is Cody and welcome to Gungho Dog Training. This video that you're about to watch is the loose leash walking masterclass. It is going to be very extensive, it's going to be very full, it's going to be everything that you need to know in order to train your dog how to walk loosely on the leash. Now, this isn't theory, this isn't one study, this isn't one tool, this isn't a quick fix formula. This is actually a thorough process that trains your dog to walk loosely on the leash for the remainder of their life. And so if you do this correctly, you're going to actually see a transformation in your walking experience, and it's going to go from pulling and stressful to pleasant and what you originally desired when you got this dog and you wanted to go on a peaceful walk together. With that being said, I want you to take this teaching very seriously, that if you follow the process, you'll see that your dog is progressing, and it's not just an overnight success. That's what dog training should be, is like you should be having a relationship with your dog. There should be a slow progression that you're seeing, and you're building on each progression that your dog makes. So as I work through this video, I'm going to go through 9 different sections. We're going to talk about each section in detail, and they're all going to add on each other. Now, section 8 and section 9 are going to have some variables that make a huge impact on the success of loose leash walking. So make sure you stick around to the end. In this video, I'm going to break down 3 different stages that we're going to go through as we work with your dog. I'm also going to break down leash walking into 2 different modes so that we have a clear picture of, is the dog supposed to be doing this behavior, or can I give them a little bit more freedom and they can do this? So we're going to have 2 different modes, 3 different stages, super simple. If you want some additional help, I have a private training community that you can apply to enter. There's a link in the description. So let's go ahead and jump into section 1. Section 1 is titled The Problem. So this is why dogs pull in the first place. So you probably didn't know this, but you trained your dog to pull. So when your dog goes to pull you, pulling equals forward movement, and that's the direction that the dog wants to go. That's why they're pulling. So movement in that direction now becomes a reward, a reinforcement for the pulling behavior. So when the leash is tight and there's tension on it and the dog wants to go in a certain direction, they pull harder, and then they get to take a step in that direction. That step in that direction reinforces the pulling behavior. So if there's tension on the leash and your dog is continuing to move in the direction that that tension is pulling, you are training your dog, you're reinforcing your dog to pull. And dogs will repeat what works. Also, pulling is not bad. So pulling is not a bad behavior. Pulling is what you're probably watching this video, because to you, pulling is an unwanted behavior. So the dog is just doing what they are naturally doing, what they've been trained to do, what they've figured out what works. And that is not necessarily a bad behavior. So if we want a dog to pull a sled, for example, or to pull you on your skis or your bike, like that would be a good thing. Maybe it's a little mental shift for you, but pulling is not a bad thing. It's just an unwanted thing when you're walking your dog on the leash. So now let's move into section 2, and this is the framework that we're going to work through. So the Gungho 3-step framework is to teach, to condition, and then to maintain. And this is a 3-step framework that we use for all behaviors that we're teaching and and training a dog to do. If you're trying to get your dog to lay down in public and to stay there even when you walk away, you're still going to go through a teaching, conditioning, and maintenance stage with that behavior. So with leash walking, loose leash walking, we're going to teach, we're going to condition it, and then we're going to maintain it. And you'll see a combination in this process of being like very gentle with the dog, and then at other times being a little bit more firm, but we're always going to be completely fair to the dog. So we're not like overly praising and not giving any sort of structure, but at the same time, we're not like overbearing the dog with structure with no education. So we want the dog to enjoy the process as much as possible, and we want to be working with the dog back and forth so that we have a good working relationship with one another. If we move into section 3 of this video, we are going to cover walking modes. 2 different walking modes when we're walking with the dog. The first is going to be heel mode, and this is traditionally on our left side, and the dog's nose is going to be in line with our toes. It's okay, I would say, if the dog is back a little bit, like if their nose is behind us a little bit, but if the dog starts to drag too far behind, then that's not exactly heel position. So we really want the dog to be right beside us and following whatever our left leg does. So if our left leg moves forward, the dog moves forward. If our left leg moves backwards, the dog moves backwards. If it stops, it stops. The second mode is going to be the break mode. The break mode is when the dog is completely free, quote unquote, free on the leash. So the dog is free on the leash, but they can't pull us. So with these 2 different modes, our heel mode is going to be a lot more structured, and then the break mode is going to give the dog a lot more freedom. Now let's move into section 4, which is the communication model, teaching, conditioning, and maintaining. Let's go through each one individually. So teaching is going to be based on rewards and also restriction. So if we are going to be teaching a behavior, we want to reinforce positively a good behavior. We want to show the dog, hey, here's a reward for doing what I wanted you to do. But we're also going to restrict them from just like running away. So if we have a leash on, this is a form of restriction. If we have a 6-foot leash, we're restricting the dog from going 6 feet and farther away from us. So in the teaching stage, we want to have a little bit of structure where it's like, hey, I'm not just going to let you just run around and do whatever. Like, I'm going to put a leash on you and a collar or a harness, and like we're going to control the situation. But from there, I'm going to reward the behavior that I do want to see. This creates like a classroom environment. It's like, hey, let's put the kids into the room, let's put them into a seat, right? So we're restricting them a little bit, but then we have this positive learning environment where they feel safe to make mistakes because they don't actually know what's going on. We're teaching them through this process. You gotta be engaged with me, you gotta try, and then I'm gonna reward you as soon as like you start doing the behavior that I want you to do. And I'm gonna guide you along the way too. So it's not just a, hey, figure it out on your own, but I'm gonna do things to help the dog figure it out. The conditioning process is where we're gonna have the clarity that we got from the teaching stage, and that's how we know how to switch from the teaching stage into the conditioning stage, is that the dog has clarity. So like if I say to the dog, heel, and the dog comes and gets into heel position, that would be some clarity. So the dog understands what I'm asking them to do. So now we're in the conditioning stage, and we're gonna have clarity, and then we're gonna have a light motivating pressure. I'll talk about that in a second. And then after that, there's gonna be the release of the pressure, and then it's gonna follow with the reward, which we were doing in the teaching stage. So the reward continues into the conditioning stage, but we're adding in a light level motivating pressure. And oftentimes that's just seen as a little bit of tension on the leash. It could be a momentary tension, so it could be a little, like just a little tug on the leash, or it could be a continual hold tension on the leash, and as soon as the dog does what we're looking for them to do, then we release that tension. So the dog's going to start to learn even more now through the guidance of the pressure of the leash, because that's going to be the main tool that we're using when we're leash walking. Our third stage now is going to be the maintenance stage. And typically we roll into the maintenance stage with leash walking when we start to see that the dog is being consistent and reliable, and we've also been able to raise the distraction levels pretty high, and that consistency and reliability has maintained. And so we'll roll into the maintenance stage, and in this stage we're going to increase the dog's freedom, and we're also going to apply fair corrections. So we already have now a way to communicate with the dog with the leash, with that tension. And so if the dog starts to, like if we say heel, for example, at this point, and the dog is like, oh, I'm not going to heel, we can give a little tug on the leash, and now it means something very specific to the dog. And so we can give a light correction, and then the dog will come and get into heel position. So we don't want to jump into the maintenance stage until we've really fully gone through all the conditioning, and we don't want to enter into the conditioning stage until we've fully seen that the dog has been taught. So it's important to go through these stages in order: teaching, conditioning, maintaining, and you might have to do it multiple times based on the environment. Working with your dog, say in the garage where there's like not a lot of distraction going on, you could go through teaching, conditioning, maintaining, and now you're in a maintenance stage in the garage, but now you go out front in your front driveway and you need to start over at teaching again. Make sure the dog's understanding. Like, are you fully understanding what I'm asking you to do? Okay, good. Now let's condition in the driveway, and then let's maintain in the driveway. So as you go to higher distracting environments, you might need to just refresh the previous stages and continue on. A lot of times the dog gets generalized with the teaching where they pick up on it and they have a good understanding, and now we're just conditioning in multiple environments, and then we get to a point where it's like the dog's been fantastic and they're consistent, they're reliable. Now we're just maintaining that behavior across all environments. Okay, let's jump into section 5 here, where we're going to talk about heel mode in some detail here. So the position of heel mode is the dog is on our left side and their nose is in line with our toes. So the dog should be facing the same direction that we're going, right? So if you're leash walking with your dog, you want to make sure that like you're both walking in the same direction. We can use things like a fence or a wall to put the dog in between us and that guidance, guide the dog in a straight walking pattern. So walking down a fence and having the dog, the fence, and then the dog and then me, that can help, especially when we're working on like stopping and sitting, so the dog's like not spinning out, but they stay in that heel position. When we're teaching heel, we're going to be using luring and shaping as our techniques for teaching the dog. And luring is when we're providing the reward, like access to the reward up front before the behavior happens. So it's like hanging the carrot in front of a donkey. It's like they can see the reward, and so then they try to move towards it, and if you're a good trainer, then you would allow them to actually get access to it. So we hold the treat out in our hand, and I'll usually tuck the treat right underneath, like between my thumb and the palm of my hand. And so this way I can guide the dog to my left side, spin them around counterclockwise. When they get into heel position, then I release the food into their mouth. I'm also going to mark the behavior the moment that it happens. So this is before I release the food. So I'll lure the dog to my side, spin them into heel position, and then I will either say good or yes, and then release the food. So good is a marker that means keep doing what you're doing. So if I want the dog to continue to stay in heel position, I'm going to say good. If I say yes, that means you're done and you can leave heel position if you want. And also, here's a treat. So oftentimes when I'm shaping a dog where I don't have the food in my hand, they get into heel position. I'll say yes, and then I'll toss a treat for them, and then they go away from me. And that gives them an opportunity to come back and get back into heel position, then get rewarded, and I toss it out again. So at first, we're gonna lure the dog. So I want you to take food in your hand and guide the dog to your left side. It's helpful if you walk backwards. As the dog comes past you, you're gonna then start walking forwards and spin your arm in a counterclockwise motion, getting the dog into heel position, and then mark, good, and then feed the dog. Once the dog has been doing that motion, that behavior over and over again, now we know that we can start associating a verbal cue to the behavior. So as you're luring the dog into heel position, you're gonna say heel, and then you're gonna start saying it earlier and earlier and earlier. So I want you to say the verbal cue after the behavior has been consistently happening. And then I also want you to start saying the verbal cue earlier and earlier. So it's eventually gonna get to a point where the dog's not in heel position, maybe they're looking a different direction, and you say heel, and then the dog comes and gets into heel position. Before that, you're gradually gonna move that verbal cue. So you're gonna say it at first when the dog is actually about to get into heel position, like they're spinning into heel position. You're 100% confident they're gonna finish the behavior, and then you say heel. And then you start pulling the verbal cue back farther and farther. So another way that we can lure the heel position is when the dog's already in the heel position, we can have the food, put it in front of their nose and start walking forward. As the dog is walking with us, we can release the food. But then what I want you to do is be walking forward, don't release the food yet, and turn a 180 away from the dog. If the dog stays with you and takes that turn and stays by your side, then you're gonna mark it and release the food. Say yes and then release the food. These are two different ways that we can lure the heel position and then eventually shape it to really teach the dog, hey, heel position is right here, but it's also moving with me. And again, this is all very basic, right? It's a very basic heel just for an average leash walker. The heel can get very complex. You can have a contact heel, you can have a focused heel, you can walk backwards, you can spin around. There's a lot of stuff that you can make this a lot more complicated, but this video in particular is just a masterclass on the foundation of loose leash walking. Once we can do this, where we can say to the dog, heel, and then we lure them into heel position, now we can do what's called shaping. So we're not gonna have the food in our hand anymore. We can still use our hand as some guidance, but we're gonna say heel and guide the dog into heel position, and then we say good or yes, and then we pull out a piece of food and reward the dog. So in this stage of training, this is called shaping. So we're gonna tell the dog heel. At this point, they already should know it and have a lot of repetition. And I like to say heel and then pause for a second. And I like to see, are they gonna do it on their own? If not, then I'll use some body language to kind of help them a little bit. And as soon as they get into heel position, I'll say yes. And then I'll pull out a piece of food and I'll toss it so that they go run away from me. And then I call them back and I say heel, and we get them back into heel position, and then now we're playing a game. So they're getting rewarded for coming and getting into heel position, and then I throw the food away so that they go away from me. At this point, you're kind of done with the teaching stage with heel, because if you can tell your dog heel, and then they come and get into heel position, now you know they really do understand what we're wanting them to do. So then we move into the conditioning stage for heel, and there's going to be two different movements that we're going to use to condition the dog with this behavior. One movement is something that I call the reset. and the other one is called the 180. The reset is where we're walking backwards and we're guiding the dog towards us, and we spin them into heel position and then we walk forwards. So this is a great way to like get your dog initially into heel position. And with the reset, the more you move your body, the more you're helping the dog. So move your body a lot, like you're kind of dancing with the dog, where it's like, I'm gonna move and walk with you. I'm gonna walk backwards. I might take a step to the right, and that pulls you into my side, and then I step forwards, and now we're in heel position. Over time, I'm gonna make my steps smaller and less, and then eventually I'm gonna stand there and I'm not gonna move at all. And I wanna be able to say heel and not move my body at all, and the dog does all the movement into heel position. So in the conditioning stage for heel, we're gonna start to add in some leash tension. And the teaching stage, it's okay, like if you have a leash on the dog, like it's okay, just try not to put any tension on the dog other than keeping them from running away from you. But in the conditioning stage, we are going to apply some tension every time we give the verbal cue. So for example, with the reset movement, I want you to imagine the dog is out in front of me and looking towards me, and I'm looking at the dog, and I have the leash on the dog, and then I say heel, and I apply some light tension to the leash. As the dog comes back and comes into heel position, I maintain that leash tension all the way until the dog gets into heel position, and then I release the tension on the leash once they're in heel position. And I can use my marker to also help like reinforce that moment that they're in the heel position. So the dog has tension on the leash, they get in heel position, and then I say good, and then I release the tension on the leash, and then I give them a treat. So you're gonna mark, and then you're gonna release the tension, and then give them a treat. And you're doing these three things that are like really teaching and making it very clear to the dog, like, hey, you did exactly what I was asking you to do. We're using a positive reinforcement, which is the food. We're also using the negative reinforcement, which is the tension on the leash. It's the moment that that leash tension releases, that's a teaching moment for the dog. The leash tension is not a correction. The leash tension is not discipline in this. This is very light tension on the leash. But the moment that that tension releases is a moment where the dog is getting reinforced just in a different way. I'm taking something away to reinforce the behavior, where when I give the treat, I'm adding something to reinforce the behavior. So I'm both taking something away and adding something pretty much at the same time to reinforce the behavior. And there is a progression of like, I want you to mark, I want you to say good, release the tension, then give them a treat. I want you to do it in that order. But as long as you get those down, it's gonna be super helpful. So with the reset, you're saying heel, you're walking backwards, there's tension on the leash all the way until the dog is in heel position. Good or yes. If you want the dog to stay in heel position, say good. If you want the dog to be free, you're gonna say yes. Say good, release the tension on the leash, and then give them a treat. That's movement number one for conditioning heel. The other movement that we have is the 180. So now if we're gonna be conditioning the 180 movement, we're gonna have the leash on the dog, we're gonna be walking forward in heel position, and then we're gonna turn a 180 away from the dog, and as we turn, we're gonna give a little tug on the leash. And all that's saying is like, hey, I'm turning, come with me. That's all you're saying with that little tug. It's not a super hard tug, it's just a very light turn, little tug. And I should tell you that you should be starting all this training in very low distracting environment. If you get into too high of distraction and the dog's not staying focused, then you need to probably reset and go to a location where it's lower distraction. Because you really want to start with low distraction and then gradually increase your distraction up, and you'll see where your dog is struggling, and then you want to kind of work in that zone of proximal development where the dog is is getting stretched, but they're also really doing really good, and you want to just slowly increase that distraction level. So when we're conditioning the 180, we are walking with the dog, we turn and we give a little tug on the leash. If the dog then comes with us, which they should at this point, like, because we've been working on it so much, they come with you, then you mark it and reward the dog. So every time you're doing conditioning, you're saying a verbal cue, you're applying some form of leash tension, whether it's continuous until they complete the behavior, or it's just a momentary little tug, and then you mark the behavior and you reward it. And that's that conditioning process. So as you work on this, you want to slowly add your distraction levels and continue to condition by guiding the dog. You're really giving the dog a ton of structure and really helping them stay in heel position. And after this, we're going to move into a maintenance stage where you're at the point now where you see that your dog is like really being consistent and reliable about staying in heel position and walking well without any tension on the leash. And we're going to move into a maintenance stage where we're going to add more distance, more duration to staying in heel position. And we're going to also start to fade out that conditioning low level pressure that we're using with the leash, and we're going to fade out the food reward, because we want to get to a point where the dog's just doing the behavior because it's their job, but they don't necessarily need like a treat every single time to do it. And we also don't need to guide them with the leash anymore, because they should just know this is what I'm supposed to do. Now in the maintenance stage, you might have a moment where the dog is like, actually I'd rather just leave, I want to go smell, this flower, I want to go over here for whatever. And that's where you can bring in that leash tension now that really means something to the dog. And you're bringing it in as a form of a correction. But if you go through this teaching conditioning, your correction now is way more gentle and way more communicative as far as like how effective it is, because you have gone through all this training up until this point. If you try to just start off leash walking and the dog doesn't stay in heel position and you give him a pop on the leash, like the dog is like, what did I do? Like the dog's more confused. When you add pressure, like leash tension is a form of pressure. So when you add pressure and there's confusion, it only increases the confusion. But if there's clarity and you add some pressure, it can increase the clarity. So an appropriate and gentle and fair correction can actually increase the clarity for the dog and then improve their behavior so much quicker. So we want to be really like fair to the dog, where we're really showing them like, hey, this is everything we've gone through, and then now you're deciding like not to do it. Like, hey, here's a little pop on the leash, and then the dog comes and falls back in line. So that's the point where we can give a correction, but it's not before that. It's definitely not in the teaching stage, because the dog doesn't know what they're supposed to do. And we're going to be correcting with the same exact conditioning pressure that we were using before. So it's nothing that the dog is unfamiliar with. They should have a lot of clarity of like, oh, that makes total sense. I know I was supposed to be doing this and I wasn't, and now I'm gonna fall back in line. So this is all heel mode. This is all section 5 heel mode, the position, how we teach it, how we condition it, and then we maintain it. Now let's jump into section 6, which is going to be all about the break mode. So in section 6, we have the position that we need to talk about. So heel mode was like, we explained that. But now we have break mode, which is kind of a lot more fun to the dog. So we say break, and now the dog can go anywhere they want on the leash. So if we only did heel mode, it'd be like super militant, and it'd just be like not super fun for the dog. The dog wants to go and explore and smell stuff and pee and poop and do all this stuff. So we're going to give them an opportunity to do that by using break mode. So if we say break, the dog can go anywhere they want on the leash. The only rule is that they can't put tension on the leash. They can't pull us. So we also need to teach the dog how break mode functions. And how we do this is through an exercise called low-level leash pressure. So we want to teach the dog to yield to pressure on the leash. And we want them to yield to the lightest form of pressure possible. It can eventually become a more intense pressure later on, but we want to try to communicate with the least amount of pressure as possible, always with dog training. So what we do for this exercise is we have the dog, they're free on the leash, and we wait until they're looking in a different direction from us. So I'm here and the dog's like facing the other way. And then I'll put some light tension on the leash and I maintain it. And as soon as the dog turns back towards me, then I go, yes. And then I put out my hand and give them a food reward. I usually have them come back to me. You could also throw the food just on the ground in front of you. That's gonna teach the dog, as soon as you feel this tension on the leash, if you turn and release that tension, if you turn and shut that tension off, you're gonna get rewarded right away. And as you do this more and more, you'll notice that you just slightly start to put tension on the leash and the dog turns and comes to you. And that is a great way to teach the dog that the leash pressure actually means something. So before, the leash was just annoying. It was just like this pressure that the dog had to pull against to get what they wanted. And now we're teaching them, hey, this actually is a line of communication. So if you're walking with your dog and you're just holding tension on the leash the whole time, you've basically just poisoned your line of communication, okay? You've cut the phone line, like there's just an empty signal there. There's no communication there. We want to have a loose leash when we're walking so that when we do apply tension, it actually means something for the dog. So low-level leash pressure. Start in a very low distracting environment, have your dog facing away from you, put light tension on the leash, usually kind of down a little bit to the side can be helpful. Having the leash actually level, that's what I mean by level. So low means like low intensity, light, we could say light level leash pressure. So light level leash pressure, hold the leash level, not up super high, not super down super low, but just level. And then as soon as the dog turns to come back, then we mark it, good, or yes, and then we give them a treat. So I would say good if I wanted the dog to like recall all the way to me, because that would mean like, hey, you started to do something, keep coming all the way to me. So if I said here, and then I put tension on the leash to get them to come, and then as soon as they turn, then I go, good, and then they have to come to my hand to get the yes. If I'm just trying to get them to shut the tension off, then I will put the tension on the leash without saying anything, and then as soon as they turn, then I go, yes, and then I'll give them a treat. Either toss it or give it to them from my hand. So this is like kind of the teaching process of break mode, is that I want you to understand that you're not supposed to have leash tension. You can go wherever you want, but as soon as there's leash tension, I'm trying to communicate something with you. So now let's move into the conditioning stage for the break mode as part of this section 6. So for conditioning, we like to do this exercise called the follow me exercise. This is where I'm gonna have the leash all the way out. I'm gonna be holding the very end of the leash. If your leash has like a loop on it at the end, I like to put both my hands in that loop. And then I walk backwards. So make sure you're in a safe place where you're not gonna trip over anything. And it's a big open space. Could be in the yard or the garage or an indoor, like open room. Training rooms are great at training facilities, but walking backwards. So you're holding the leash and you're walking backwards and you're trying to intentionally walk in a different direction than the dog is headed. And the whole goal of this exercise is for you to change directions and the dog changes and follows you without there being any tension on the leash. So if I walk away from the dog, and then if they get to the end of the leash and there's tension, I'm just gonna give a little tug, 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 and I'm gonna keep walking backwards. But as soon as they turn and come towards me, and I go, good, and I can give them a treat there, but I eventually want to start to like fade the treats while I do this exercise. So now the dog's walking towards me. I'm going to turn and I'm going to start walking. I'm still walking backwards, but I'm going to turn and I'm going to walk now a different direction than where the dog was headed. And if the dog turns and comes with me without the leash getting tight, that's the goal of this follow me exercise. And we can start to raise the distraction level and do this follow me exercise in a lot of different environments. So you could go out to a public park, you could go outside the dog park and use that as a distraction so you can control how close you are to the fence, right? Now you're controlling that variable, and as you get closer, the distraction level is going up. As you get farther away, the distraction level is going down, and you just work on this follow me exercise. When you get to a point where you can just walk backwards, you can turn any direction, and your dog's just following you while you're walking backwards, no matter which direction you turn, then you've accomplished this conditioning process for the break mode. And sometimes I will just now turn and now start walking forward with the dog. So now we're actually getting into like what break mode is going to look like with your dog. So you're walking backwards, your dog's following you, you change directions, they keep following you, and now as they're following you, right, the dog's coming right towards me, I'm going to turn and I'm going to walk the same direction now with the dog. And then we just start walking, and I let the dog continue to be free. But if the dog goes out in front of me and they're about to put tension on the leash again, I switch from walking forward to walking backwards. So as soon as they get to the end of that leash, I go tug, 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 and then I start walking backwards and I go back into this follow me exercise. And if they're with me, then I start walking forward again. And eventually the dog really gets the hang of it, being free on the leash and walking forward with each other, and you're just kind of exploring and walking. So you really want to train, you want to teach and condition both the heel mode and the break mode. And then we're going to mix them together. But let's talk real quick about the maintenance stage for the break mode. So if we have a dog that's consistent, reliable, then we're going to actually give the dog more and more freedom in break mode over time. So when you go on a walk, there's going to be a mixture of break mode and heel mode. And I'll talk about that in a second, but let's jump into section 7 where we talk about the walk structure. So we're going to have the progression of the walk progression. And we're going to start off our walk in heel mode. We're always going to start in heel mode. We want to make sure that we always have heel mode available. No matter what environment we're in, we want to make sure that heel is an option, the dog's on the same page as us. Then the dog can earn break mode. So if they're doing great in heel mode, then say break and give them some freedom on the leash. If they start to pull a ton or whatever, then you can bring them back into heel mode and give them a little bit more structure. Remember, heel mode is more structure, break mode is more freedom. You should be able to get your dog back into heel mode at any time, no matter what distraction is going on. So if you can't, like if your dog's in break mode and they're distracted by another dog and you say heel and the dog is not listening, then you know, like, okay, this is a good place where we're at. Like, this is our zone of proximal development. If the dog is progressing in this behavior, and this is where we need to work. And so now our walks are going to be focused on this type of, growth. And then we might go to like a less distracting environment to have like some more easy wins and end on a good note before we end our training session. So when you start off your walks, you might be in heel mode like 90% of the time. And then you find a spot where your dog can sniff and go to the bathroom. And so you tell them break, and you spend some time just standing in that area, and they're free on the leash. And then you start to walk again, and so you say heel and get them back into heel mode. At the beginning, the dog's going to be in heel mode most of the time, but that percentage can start to decrease, and then the percentage of the time that's in break mode can start to increase. I just don't want you to give your dog too much freedom too quickly And I also don't want you to be like too restrictive of your dog. So I want there to be a healthy balance between heel mode and brake mode. All right, now we're getting to kind of the meat and potatoes of like the variables that have a huge impact on your training. So I'm glad that you stuck around to this point. Let's jump into section 8, which is all about the variables. So these variables matter a lot. They matter a lot because they do play a really big impact on the dog, and there might be situations where you're like, Cody, like I followed all your steps and all the things you're doing, but like my dog just keeps ignoring me. Like, why are they not listening? I'm like putting some tension on the leash and they're not listening. So the variables that we want to talk about are, one is going to be the leash type. The type of leash that you use is extremely important. So if we have, I'm going to put leashes into like 2 categories. So one category is going to be dynamic, and that means that the leash has some stretch to it. The other category is static. So if the leash does not have any stretch to it, that would be a static leash. Ideally, I like to walk with a static leash. I like to feel exactly what the dog is feeling on the other end of the leash. So if the dog pulls at a certain level of pressure, I want to feel that same amount of pressure in my hand. Vice versa, if I give a certain amount of pressure, I want the dog to feel that same amount on the other end. If I have a leash that stretches, and there's like a bungee in it or something like that, if I go to pull, it's not giving the same amount of pressure at the same time. And so it's really hard to communicate precisely with a dog when you have a dynamic leash versus a static leash. An example of what a static leash would be like a leather leash. There are nylon leashes that are static, but ideally for me, what I mostly use and what I give to my clients is a biothane leash. It's like a fake leather, but it is static, and it's really like easy to hold, slides through your hand. It doesn't get smelly when it gets wet and dirty. It's super easy to clean, and you can really feel what the dog is feeling. So our leash type is going to be a static leash. Now let's talk about harnesses versus the collar. Dogs that wear harnesses, they have, something that's strapped around like the frame of their body. A lot of times when a dog pulls with a harness, they're getting all that pressure like on their lower collarbone, their upper chest, but also into their shoulders. And it's actually really comfortable for the dog, depending on what type of harness they're wearing. Like the dog can really pull into that pressure and feel very comfortable. So there's a reason why we use harnesses when we want dogs to pull like a sled or something. And I typically will only use a harness for, 1, a dog that I want to pull something, 2, a dog that is a service animal, so we need to have something for someone to like grab onto if they're like, the dog's helping them get up off the floor. So we use a harness for that. And then the third scenario is if it's like a little puppy or a little small dog. Like if you have a small dog, then a harness can be helpful in those scenarios. But the downside of the harness is that it makes pulling more comfortable. So if you have a dog, and we talked about how pulling gets reinforced when they move forward. If that whole process of pulling is comfortable, there's nothing aversive about it at all, then the dog is going to be okay with that behavior. And if a dog is really habituated that behavior a lot, it can be really hard to like change the dog's mind, because dogs have what's called opposition reflex. And so if you typically push on a dog, they push back. If you pull on a dog, they pull back. And the harness can really activate that opposition reflex very strongly. It can still happen with the collar, but the harness, it tends to happen more because the dog like can really lean into that pressure. So if you're watching this video, you've been using the harness and you have a really hard time pulling, when you change your training communication, it is usually a good time you could change the tool as well. So if you switch to using like a flat collar, and remember, we're using very light pressure, and we're trying to not have that pressure on continually. So when people talk about like a flat collar putting tension on the dog's neck and it causing neck problems, that's a dog that's like continuing to pull repeatedly with that tension. But if you follow the system, that's not what we do, right? So we're teaching the dog to walk with a loose leash. So if the dog has a neck collar on and you're walking with a loose leash, then you're fine. Like you're not hurting the dog at all. So I'll do this also with little dogs. I'll work with just a normal flat collar while I'm teaching them all these things. And we do it in a low distracting environment so they're not, you know, going crazy and pulling super hard. And but in general, I would say, like, let's try to do this teaching with a collar, like a flat collar and the leash. And then from there, you can always progress. Like, you could go back to the harness. You could try it with the harness. You could try the front clip on the harness. It's just, I'm gonna be honest with you, with my experience working with a lot of different types of dogs, I like to teach, which is the flat collar on and the leash. And make sure it's, you know, just a solid flat collar that's snug on their neck. They can't slip it over their head. And then we have a static leash attached to that. And that's kind of my preferred tool setup for when I'm like teaching heel and working on leash walking. Another thing to keep in mind about the harness versus a collar is that the dog is more comfortable putting tension on the harness, so you might have to be a little bit stronger depending on how big your dog is. So if your dog is really big and pulling super hard, well, the dog could care less about the leash tension. They might just drag you across the yard depending on how big the dog is. So sometimes a harness for a big dog is just like you really want them to pull in that scenario. All right, so let's talk about the different types of collars that are out there. We have the flat collar. So a flat collar is just a normal, standard, basic, most common collar that you see. It's flat all the way around. There's usually like a D-ring that you can clip to on the collar. The next type of collar would be a martingale style collar. So this is oftentimes a flat collar, but then there's like a triangle section of the collar where you clip to one part of the triangle, and as you pull up, it tightens the rest of the collar and squeezes the dog's neck a little bit, but it doesn't choke the dog. It just squeezes the neck a little bit, and it's a different sensation than the flat collar. In order for a martingale collar to really work, it needs to be snug before you go to tighten it. If you can tighten that martingale section and it's still loose on the dog, you basically just have a flat collar on your dog. So switching from a flat collar to a martingale collar usually is not that much of a difference. There have been a few dogs where the martingale was like what the dog needed. Like the flat collar wasn't enough, and then we switched to a martingale and it was like, okay, the dog was like really sensitive to it, and like we were able to communicate very gently, and it was what they needed. Most of the time the martingale, like you could probably just skip it and move on to something else, because if the flat collar is not working, then yeah, the martingale is not going to be that much different. But sometimes it is. So if you really want to be diligent and go through all the stages, then like you could go from a flat collar to a martingale and see if it makes a difference. Next would be a slip lead, and I would also put like choke chain in this same category. I don't personally use choke chains ever in training. Like I don't see them being very effective. You have to like still do really firm pops on the leash, and I don't want to do that. So specifically with the choke chain. So I don't really like the sound that it makes. I've noticed that dogs will start to react to the sound, and I really want the dog to just be incongruent with like my communication. I want the training tool to eventually go away. Like if I train correctly with the training tool, it should eventually go away. So I don't ever use choke chains. However, if you go to like a dog show, like they're using like a choke chain walking these dogs around. They also hold continual tension, so that's a whole another thing. But yeah, there are different industries in the dog training world that are going to use different types of collars more commonly than other parts. And that's going to have a big part to do with like what type of dogs are we working with, what are we wanting these dogs to do. These collars make a big difference on what your end goal is. So with a slip lead, this is very common in Europe. It's very common, like in the United States. It's also common as well. But it's similar to a choke chain in that like it's tightening, constricting like on the dog's neck. And a lot of slip leads, like there's no stopper on them. So like you pull tight enough, like it will choke the dog. But there are some slip leads out there that have a stopper on them so that you could tighten and cinch on the dog's neck, but then it will stop at a certain point, similar to like how the martingale did. A slip lead has to really like be communicated effectively. Like you don't want continual tension with a slip lead. You want there to be a very quick like pop on the leash, whether it's light or firm. Like you want it to be very quick momentary pressure with a slip lead in order for it to be effective. If you're holding tension on a slip lead, like you could, like the dog could pass out. So if you're not careful, the thicker the slip lead is, the more comfortable it is for the dog, and the thinner the slip lead is, the more aversive it is for the dog. The slip lead needs to go on a certain way. If the dog's walking on your left versus the right, there's a certain way that the slip lead should go on. So like keep that in mind as well. The next collar, we'll put it in the collar category, is a head halter. And there's a bunch of different brands of these, but it basically is like a halter that goes over the dog's snout and also goes behind their ears. Oftentimes you're clipping right underneath the dog's chin, so when you pull, you're controlling their head. And there's a lot of different opinions on these. In general, for me, this is me like personally, dogs, my observance is that dogs just do not like to wear these. So if a dog is doing everything correctly, but they're wearing a head halter, like you're kind of giving a dog a correction for like doing the right thing. So I want to be able to use a collar that I can turn the pressure on and off to communicate with the dog. So if a head halter is like a constant correction for a dog, which for most of them is, like yeah, they get used to it and stuff, but it's this constant correction. I just don't like to use that. So I don't really use head halters very often. The rare occasions that I do, it's when it's like a really big dog, like a big Rottweiler or Great Dane, and I'm trying to control their head. Like the dog's really struggling with like moving like the head movement towards me. And so like a horse, like I did work with horses before I worked with dogs, like a horse, like we're using that halter and the reins to help control the dog's, to control the horse's head. And so it's similar with dogs, but in general, like I don't use head halters very often. And then the last type of collar would be like a prong collar or a pinch collar. Now there's plastic pinch collars out there. There's also the metal pinch collars out there. And these can be a very effective tool. I would put it at the higher end of aversiveness along with the head halter. Like I would put those at like the higher end of aversiveness, because when a dog pulls on a pinch collar, it's going to give them a little pinch all the way around their neck. That being said, we can also communicate very gently with the pinch collar and have a lot of control. So if we use the collar correctly and we are very gentle and fair with it, it can be a very effective tool for leash walking. There are just some dogs that they don't really need it. Like there's some dogs they're sensitive enough with the flat collar that they don't really need the pinch collar. There are some dogs that get super excited and crazy when they see like another dog, and oftentimes the pinch collar can really help that dog like stay calm and have some more self-control. And again, it's a training tool, so like eventually it should go away. I see the pinch collar oftentimes as like a band-aid, where like you can put it on the dog, introduce it to him, and then all of a sudden you have a dog that doesn't pull anymore. And it's a very quick transformation. But then I asked the question, like, did you actually teach the dog? Like, did you actually teach the dog what heel means? Or are you just using that pinch collar to correct the dog and tell them what not to do? So if we're going to use a more aversive collar, then we got to make sure that like we've done the proper teaching, we've done the conditioning with the lightest level of pressure possible, and then now we're using that more aversive tool to like gently guide the dog along through higher distracting environments. And yes, there are definitely dogs that like that's what they needed to progress through the training. And oftentimes there's like dogs with a lot of bad habits of pulling, where like a more aversive collar, like a pinch collar, can help correct it. And I use a very specific pinch collar. There's one specific pinch collar that I use, and I've used different sizes and different places on their neck and different places to fit it. And I'm not going to go into all the detail in this video. This is kind of an overview of the collars, but if you're going to use a pinch collar, make sure you ask me like, what specifically should I be using? That's that. The last collar that I would put on the list is the e-collar. So an e-collar is going to either vibrate, it's going to give a tone, or it's going to give an electrical stimulation. There's a lot to go over with the e-collars, but that being said, you could use an e-collar as well for leash walking. There's a very gentle way to do it. There's a specific brand to use, a specific model for your dog. I would ask me about that because we want to make sure that with a more aversive tool, like we're not punishing the dog for anything that they don't know what they're supposed to do. We also want to make sure that the tool is in the hands of someone that is skilled enough and has enough self-control that they can manage it properly with the dog and be fair to the dog. That being said, the way that I use the e-collar when I do is a very gentle way to do it, and it leads to an off-leash heel. So I talked to you about conditioning with the leash tension. So we can use a very, very low level stimulation that's like a TENS unit, like for physical therapy, where the dog feels it, but they're not showing any involuntary reflex, right? The dog's not twitching, the dog's not yelping, jumping, like there's nothing like that. It's a very, very light stimulation, and the dog could completely ignore it if they want. This can also be true with vibrate, but in my experience, a lot of times vibrate is more intense than the low level electrical that I end up using. So I'll use that low level electrical and signal the dog where like I'll say heel and turn on the low level electrical. The dog gets into heel position, and then I shut that stimulation off, and then I reward the dog. And now I'm kind of deleting the leash. So the leash has become a backup for me, but if the dog gets reliable with the e-collar, then I just unclip the leash, and now I have an off-leash healing dog where I still have that e-collar to communicate if the dog decided to run off or something. So all that being said, there's a lot to talk about when it comes to using an e-collar with training, but it is another tool that we can use when it comes to leash walking. So I have two more variables that I want to go over with you. The second to last one is the environment. So the environment you train in is a huge, huge variable. Like, is there another dog in the room? Are there kids in the room? Is there food in the room? You know, are you outside? Are you in the gravel versus in the grass? Like, there's a lot of variables that happen with the environment that change the way that the dog is thinking. What time of day is it? Is the dog hungry? Is the dog not? What's the temperature outside? Has the dog had water? Like, how much exercise happened before you did the training? All of this plays into the environment of your training session with your dog when it comes to loose leash walking. If you turn the corner and there's a dog that's lunging at the fence and barking at your dog, like that's a different environment than if you're trying to walk through a big open field and there's tall grass. Like those two completely different environments. So you really want to pay attention to the environments where your dog is really focused on you. And you want to have a scale. I like to put together a list of 10 different locations from the least distracting environment to the most distracting environment. And then I'll work with my dog with leash walking from the low level all the way up through all these 10 different environments to the highest distracting environment. And that's an easy way for you to kind of check off and keep track of like, how is your dog progressing when it comes to loose leash walking in relation to the distractions and things that might trigger them as well. The last variable that we should go over is the handler ability / skill. So you working with your dog, you have a skill level, and we're all growing in our handler skill. So we're all growing in how we're communicating with dogs. But say if you handed me the leash, I worked with your dog, I might be able to progress your dog a lot quicker than if I hand the leash to you and ask you to do it. So have some grace, have some patience with yourself where you're at, and then also don't try to progress into something too quickly if like you're not ready for that. Your dog might be ready, but like you might not be ready either. So you need to practice the movements, practice the stages of training, practice the different modes. Like there's a level of skill that you need to progress as well. And this is one of the biggest things with dog training is like, we're not just training dogs, like we're training humans as well. Like if our dog is getting trained, we need to be in training as well. All that to say, the skill level of the handler is a big variable to consider when it comes to loose leash walking. Now let's jump into section 9. This is our last section, and I want to go over something that's really important. So what I want you to do is I want you to make like a mental shift. I want you to replace your walks with training. So training is going to be greater than just wandering. And if your walks right now are kind of classified as just wandering for the dog, it's like the dog's on the leash with the dog just kind of going wherever they want and they're pulling you. We don't want that to continue. And so I want you to take that routine of just like, hey, we're gonna go for a walk and we're gonna go, to XYZ location and back, or we're gonna go take a walk around the block. I don't want you to have that mentality. I want you to say, hey, we're gonna go work on loose leash walking and we're gonna see how far we get today. And that way it's just open. Your expectations are, hey, we're gonna work on training. You might make it 5-10 feet out your front door and you're like, okay, like this is where we're at today. This is where we're gonna be training, is right in front of the front door. And that's okay. So I don't want you to try to push things farther or faster than they need to, but I do want you to progress. Don't be afraid of moving forward and making mistakes, but at the same time, throw the agenda out the window and just have the expectation that you're gonna be working with your dog and you're gonna be trying to improve their behavior. Mental stimulation is so important for your dog, and when you go for a walk and you're working on heel position and brake mode and you're telling your dog what to do, the walk is going to become so much more mental for the dog than it is physical. And this is going to drain your dog more, so they might not actually be able to go on as long of a walk as they could before, because now there's a lot for them to think about. They're having to stay in line with you in heel mode, and you're slowing down, and then you're speeding up, and then you're stopping, and then you're resetting them, and you're turning and going the other way. Like the dog is like really having to mentally focus on like, where's the handler going? Like, where are you going? I gotta be following you, and that's a lot for them to think about. And then the very last thing that's really important that I want to tell you is that you're not alone. So you're not alone in this journey. There's a lot of people that have gone before you that have figured this out. So it is possible. Yes, you can do it. Maybe you're in a wheelchair. Maybe you have a prosthetic leg. Maybe there's some form of like disability that you're like, well, what about me? Like, could I also do this? Like, yes, you could do this. Maybe you have a really huge dog. Maybe you have a little tiny dog. Maybe you have 5 dogs. Maybe you've never trained a dog before. Maybe you've worked with thousands of dogs and you're watching this video just to learn from another trainer. Like, you can do this. Like, I want to encourage you, like, you're not alone and you can do this. And this is why I try to offer like as much support and help as possible. And a video like this can only go one way, but I have a private training community that people are active in, and they're there to help each other. So if you want to be a part of the private training community, there's a link down in the description. Click on the link and apply to join, and we'll see you on the inside of the community. I hope this video has been super helpful for you. Please leave me a comment and a like and subscribe. And more important than anything else, tell your dog I say hi.